All right, so chapter 19, section 1. We're getting into the Industrial Revolution. We're getting into a time period that got us to a point that resembles what your world kind of looks like today. All right, you live in an industrialized society. If you didn't know that, now you do. You might not have ever referred to it that way or never heard of it that way, but you live in a world that relies upon buying and selling goods, right, that are produced and manufactured somewhere, that are shipped. And that is basically an industrialized culture, all right, or an industrialized society. With that comes a lot of situations that you now have to deal with, okay? And we're going to get into those things. You are going to hear words in the notes that I'm giving, in the discussions that we have, that are all over the news today. Have you heard the term socialism recently? Yeah. If you haven't, then you have not turned on any news source or gone on any Twitter page or walked outside probably, or sat in a restaurant where people were talking at the table near you. You may not be using these terms, because if I was your age and I was talking about socialism, I would want to get myself a life as a child. Like, I try not to talk about this stuff in front of my children because they don't need the, why does my 10-year-old need to hear about socialism? You know what I mean? But it's interesting, my 15-year-old son now is talking about this stuff and asking me questions about this stuff, and wanting to understand it, because it does come across your Twitter feeds and your Facebook feeds and your news sources just in general. Socialism has been a word that has been thrown around ad nauseum over the past few years now, okay? And it's interesting, all right? We live in what we call a capitalist society, right? Where competition drives business, okay? Does that have positives? Absolutely. Does it have negatives? Absolutely. But I would say it is the best system. That's my opinion. It doesn't mean it's right? That's the beauty of opinions. You can have them. I could probably back that up with some significant facts. But somebody who believes that socialism is a good thing can probably back up their opinion with some pretty good facts. I think history bears itself out in my favor in that argument. But that doesn't mean you have to think that way. You can figure it out for yourselves and run for it. We have a lot of Congress people right now that believe that socialism is a good form of economy and government. We'll see how that plays out. But we're going to get into things today and over the next couple of weeks that you've at least heard of. Like, it's not this far-fetched thing, okay? So the Industrial Revolution, let's get rolling. Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain, 1780s. There were several reasons. You're going to want to know these reasons why the Industrial Revolution happened, all right? First, agriculture practices in the 18th century changed. All right, so farming changed. Got it? That's agriculture. More people could be fed at a lower price with less labor. All right? Now even ordinary British families had money to buy manufactured goods. So because food was cheaper, people had more change in their pocket. Guess what people do when they have more money in their pocket? They spend it usually, right? Recently, you've probably heard of stimulus checks. Right now, when I was growing up, my entire life, I had never heard of a stimulus check really until the last year and a half. You know what I'm saying? So, but the thought is, if you have more money in your pocket, you will spend it. So because now there were more people with more money in their pockets, people are going to want to produce more goods for people. Does that make sense? That's this concept of filling a need, right? All right, so food was cheaper, people had more money, people would be more willing to spend. Let's keep going. Second, with a more abundant food supply, the population grew. We've talked about that before. If you can feed more people, guess what's going to happen? More people are going to have kids, right? If I can only provide for one child, if I'm smart, guess how many kids I'm going to have? One. If I can provide for two, and I want to, I might have a second child, all right? I ended up with twins for our second and third child. So I had to figure out a way to provide for my kids to eat. Do you understand? But if there's enough food, people will tend to have more kids, all right? They'll survive longer. So we see that happening. Now there's more people, all right? And the interesting thing is this would create a larger labor force to work in factories. More people equals more what? Workers. Does that make sense? The United States has a massive workforce, all right? That's why we're always talking about unemployment rates, right? How many people are working? How many people are in factories? How many people are doing something, okay? So you have a larger increase of people, more people willing to buy things, but also more people that can work. Third, Britain had money to invest in new machines and factories. So this idea or this money is called capital. When you're investing something into something, it's called a capital. It's called capital. You'll hear terms thrown around, even if you turn in the news, capital gains, meaning if I invest in something and I get money out of it, that's a capital gain. All right, I'm making money off of my money. So these people now, Britain as a country, had more money to invest in more machines. Does that make sense? So now, if they're investing in more machines, they're going to be able to manufacture more stuff. These are very simple, basic reasons why this all happened. Many British people were very wealthy and were interested in finding new business opportunities and new ways to make profits. These people are called entrepreneurs. Underline that. Entrepreneurs. If you are a business person who is trying to start new things and do new things, you're an entrepreneur. All right? You're using your own money. You're using your own capital. You're investing. All right? Over the past year or so, you will hear people argue that entrepreneurs, that business leaders are bad, that they're greedy. They probably are a bit greedy, right? There's no arguing that. Is greed good? I would argue no, but driving forces of keeping businesses running, not many people over the past year would argue that Amazon was a pretty good company to have around, right? Now, they made billions of dollars while other companies went under, but again, if Amazon didn't exist over the past year or so, a lot of people would have been complaining that they couldn't even get groceries to their home, right? So there's a positive and a negative, all right? So I don't agree that all people that are entrepreneurs are evil, right? All they want to do is make money off of other people. But I do agree that that some of the entrepreneurs that are making billions of dollars maybe could give back a little bit more. But I also don't know what they're giving, right? A lot of people have a problem with a lot of the people that are making billions of dollars not giving and giving and giving. Well, I don't know their bank account. I have no idea what Bill Gates is giving. I know you can find out if you really cared, but a lot of people just want to throw out there that they're awful because they're making so much money and the worker is making so little. The worker wouldn't have a job if that guy didn't start a business. See how that works? See the positive there? The person had the money to start the business. I don't have money to start a business, right? I'm not rich, but somebody else might have some money, and guess what now I can do? I can now work for them. I wouldn't have had a job if they didn't start the business. So there's a positive there. Does that make sense? There are some negatives, though, you can get taken advantage of. If you look at Amazon, it's a big company right now, right? Anybody know anybody that works for Amazon? Most people do. It's almost like, if you're alive, you know somebody that works for Amazon. That's how big they are as a company. There's been a lot of negative that have come out about how Amazon works its employees. Well, obviously, that's a negative of capitalism. But those people do have jobs. Do you see? So should they fix that negative of capitalism? Of course they should. Pay better wages if they can. Maybe have people have more breaks. Do you see how that works out? So there's positives and negatives. So here's the fourth reason. Natural resources such as coal and iron ore were plentiful. Finally, Britain had a huge empire that gave the British markets, or many markets, for their goods. So they also had the means of production. They had the things that you would need to produce things, iron and coal that were needed to do all of these things. One of the main industries in Great Britain was the production of inexpensive cotton goods. There was a two-step process to this. I'm not going to go through all of that. I'll leave that section for you guys to break down. It talks about the cottage industry. So when I get done today, I'll let you go back a little bit and highlight that. You're looking for a couple names in there, what they did. Does that make sense? I'm not going to go through all of them. You might have heard their names before, but you can go back and highlight them. Who they were and what they did is what you're looking for. So if you want to write that off to the side, inventors, and a question mark. When you go back, you can highlight that. What did they do? The steam engine was crucial to Britain's industrial revolution. For fuel, the engine depended on coal. The need for coal led to an increase in coal production. The need for coal increased even more when Henry Court developed a process called puddling. All right, it's an important process. This process, coke, which was derived from coal, was used to burn away impurities in crude iron. This produced a better quality of iron. The British iron industry boomed. The high-quality iron was used to build new machines, especially new means of transportation. Why would transportation be important in an industrialized country? Why do you think? Hands. Oh, go ahead.
If everyone needs to work, there needs to be many places of work, and you not everyone can just walk there because it'd be too far. So you need people to be able to get places quicker.
Okay, I like that. So transportation is definitely good for people needing to get around. I agree with that. Get to places. I do agree with that. Why else might it be important in an industrialized culture? All these goods. Try not to think about the worker, think about the goods. What is industrial? I have one person that can figure out why a train's important. Go. Move the goods. When I call Amazon, the worker doesn't build the product, package the product, put it in their car, and drive it to me, do they? No, right? Today, we're getting to the point where we're using drones to deliver stuff. Back then, the only way that they could get stuff across countries was what? Trains. So if they could produce more trains, more train tracks, they could get products places quicker. Yes, it's important that people could get to their jobs, but most of the time, people would, because of the Industrial Revolution, and we'll get to this, moved into cities. This is why cities started popping up. They moved away from the farmlands so they could walk to work. You know anybody that lives in the city? I have family that lives in the city. Some of them don't even own cars. Why? Because they can jump on public transportation, or they can walk to their jobs, or they can ride a bike to their job. Understand? So the majority of why it's important that transportation started booming was now goods could be shipped quicker, and a lot more goods could be sold. Make sense? All right? Always when I'm giving notes. Never fails. I haven't gotten a phone call all day. Venuto, what's up? What job? Oh, it's not me. It's not me. I'm in the middle of giving notes. I'll give you a call back. All right, see you. Somebody thinks I left my job. All right, so here we go. Everybody likes me. No, I'm joking. Okay, all right. Back to notes. Okay, so we're talking about transportation. So transportation is important. Railroads were particularly important to the success of the Revolution. In 1804, the first steam-powered locomotive ran on an industrial rail line in Britain. By 1850, underline, there were over 6,000 miles of railroad track. 6,000 miles of railroad track. You and I take for granted the ability to jump on a train right now, right? Maybe you haven't in your life, but I go to New York on a train. I just drive over, jump on a train, I'm in New York, all right? The fact that we can travel so quickly and so easily within a country, not need a car per se, is pretty interesting. They're thinking about building a rail line that runs from, I want to say New York, all the way down to Florida, and like at such a high rate of speed that like it might, now again, it would make travel cheaper for some who can't afford maybe flying, but that's a pretty interesting concept, that you could jump on a train and just, you can do that now in New Jersey and go on a train all the way down if you wanted to, but it's supposed to be like ridiculously fast. And so we take for granted transportation in our day and age. We can jump on a plane and fly anywhere in the world. You couldn't do that back then, right? Think about it. You couldn't get on a train and get any, you didn't even really have the concept until this time. So you're seeing these new things pop up. So building railroads created new jobs, right? So again, why would we think that capitalism is bad when it's creating tons of jobs, right? You got to have somebody that has the money to do it. Then you got to have somebody that has the brains to put that money to work. Then you got to have people that actually want to work. All right. So there's a lot of interesting facets here that come into play. Less expensive transportation led to lower priced goods, which created larger markets. More sales meant more factories and more machinery. What do we see popping up at an not alarming, but at a ridiculous rate over the past 5 years? I've brought up Amazon 72 times. If you drive around your state right now, you will probably bump into an Amazon factory, right? Just a shipping factory. They're all over. New York was going to have one, and one of the senators turned it down. I'm not sure which political bent your family would have, but it literally is turning away thousands of jobs. Thousands of jobs. Not one or two jobs. And tax dollars. So you start seeing factories pop up. You start understanding in a time period where people are out of work, what is that going to produce for people? Work. Jobs. Okay, so yes, the evil empire of capitalism does have its negative side, right? There's always a downside to everything, and a positive usually, all right? I always call it the blessing and the curse, right? Technology is awesome, isn't it? Technology is amazing. Like the stuff that you guys have that you're growing up with right now is absolutely amazing. It's also a curse to some of you. You turn into the Walking Dead, right? And you lock in and you can't even function without your phone. People go insane if they leave their phone somewhere. What am I going to do? I have literally turned around and driven home because I didn't have my watch on, because it's my smartwatch, and that's how ridiculous. But there's a blessing and a curse. There's a lot of good things. With this industrial revolution, nobody could really see the negative side of things yet, but they started to pop up very quickly. Okay, so there are negatives. There's no doubt about that. Factories created a new labor system. Here we're going to see some of the negatives popping up. So you're going to want to underline these. Maybe right off to the side, negatives. Factory owners wanted to use their new machines constantly. You get a new toy, you want to play with it a lot, don't you? Right? Especially if it's going to make you money. Right? Think about that, okay? So as a result, workers were forced to work in shifts to keep the machines running all day. Now, I'm not a big fan of thinking about workers being forced to work per se. My son yesterday came home with an application. He's 15. He's your age, right? I told him, are you sure you want to fill that out and really get hired somewhere? Now, why would I say that to him? Because he's 15. The second that you decide you're going to work, you are now giving yourself some responsibilities that you didn't need. He doesn't need to work, right? He's eating. He's got nice clothes. He's doing okay for himself at this point because mommy and daddy are okay. But is he being forced to work? No. Right? Now, were these people being forced to work? Not necessarily, but they needed to work, right? They were finding ways to work. So I think sometimes you gotta be careful with how you use words, right? Everyone probably, as they get older, should work, should make some money to be able to survive. But I don't like the thought of that these people are being forced to work. You're getting a job, right? You're getting money. Now, were they getting as much as they probably should have been getting? No, and that's the negative, right? So here we go. Factory owners created a system in which employees became used to working set hours and doing the same work over and over and over and over again. Right? It becomes mind-numbing. Adult workers, now here's where I see a problem. Here's where we see greed come in. Were fined or fired for being late or for other misconduct. Child workers were often beaten. So there's a negative, right? Now listen, if you don't show up to work, I don't find it to be a negative that you get fired, right? My son gets this job and he decides that he's going to sleep through his alarm and not get to work or forget to tell me that it's not my job to remember his schedule, is it? If he's working Monday at 7 p.m., guess where he has to be Monday at 7 p.m.? Work. Guess who he has to tell? Me or mom or grandma or somebody that's going to get him to work. It's not our jobs to remember. If he doesn't show up to work and they fire him and he comes to me and says, do you believe they fired me? What do you think I'm going to say? You're dang right I believe they fired you. Welcome to the world of life. If I don't show up to work 3 straight days, do you think Mr. Vasali is going to be like, hey, it's all right, Frank, you're good? What do you think he's going to say to me? Hey, bud, we need to talk. Kids were alone until we found a sub. You're costing the district more money. We pay you to be here. We're going to look into probably finding somebody new. Thanks for being here. We love you, but bye. I mean, that's just reality. All right, so that's not the negative. Being fired for not doing what you're supposed to do. Being fined, that's probably a pretty big negative. Those people were already making a lot of money and the workers were not making a lot of money. Now you're going to take money from them? That's a negative. How about child labor? Kids working. Should kids be working? No. Let alone, now why did they have the kids working? We'll get into that a little later, but part of it was families liked when their kids worked. It was less money that they had to earn. Do you understand? But one of the things was kids could actually think about machines. Kids could get into places on these machines that you and I couldn't. So their jobs were very dangerous. I mean, you're talking about losing your life, losing limbs, fingers, right? Right? But then because they're kids, they would, if they were misbehaving, okay? So, yeah, no, not good. Even today now, thank God, there are child labor laws. My son, because he's only, I think, 15, I think they still work for 15-year-olds. I haven't had to get a job at that age in a long time, but there's only a certain amount of time he's allowed to work throughout a day. He has to get a certain amount of breaks. If somebody lays a hand on a worker nowadays, the manager is getting sued and put in jail for assault. So they've fixed this over time. But back then, that's a huge negative. Workers were treated very poorly. That's why we see unions today. Again, blessings and curses. There's good things and bad things. Some of your families might work for unions, right? Union plumbers, union electricians, teachers' unions. They're all over the place. And there are positives and negatives to that, okay? But understand that the Industrial Revolution is something that you, in this country, are affected by every single day, okay? So it's a pretty interesting thing. We're going to get into the concept of socialism and stuff as we keep moving, but it's definitely an interesting topic. Some of you guys are going to go into industry. Some of you guys are going to go into creating new industries and making money off of being in an industrialized culture, right? As great as it is, there are some drawbacks, but would you want to live in an unindustrialized area? What do you think? Do you know what that even means? What does that mean when I say living in probably a better way to say that, but in a non-industrialized country, what might that look like? Go ahead.
It wouldn't be nearly as easy to receive goods or to sell them.
Getting goods in general would be almost impossible, true. How about just the sheer fact of water? Living in an industrialized country gets us the ability to turn on a faucet and have water, right? Other countries don't have that ability, right? Some countries, people still have to walk miles to get a bucket of water for the day. So there are positives and negatives. Do we understand that? It's very easy to look at negatives and go, oh, get rid of it, tear it down. Well, how about we look at the positives, maybe fix the negatives? Does that make sense? And how do we fix those? You guys are going to be in charge of fixing those negatives pretty soon. Hopefully you can do it, right? A lot of people have messed up over the years. Hopefully you'll be able to do it. I have faith that you do, that you will be able to do it. I'm not so sure about Mike. Mike, how about you? You going to be able to fix things for us? No. Mike, come on, man. You're supposed to say, absolutely, Venuto. Have faith in me. Nothing. No comment. That was I gave you an opening there, Mike. All right. So that's the notes for today. We'll pick up again tomorrow or whenever I feel like doing them again. Let me lock this.